I heard the testimony and have had, gosh, 35 years in those mountain ranges, starting here with the Santa Lucia. The next one over just northeast of Pozo would be the San Jose Range, and then the Temla Range, and then of course the San Joaquin Valley. Standing on those mountaintops through the course of my employment, many times I've looked towards the Kern County line and can see the pollutants. Yet we all understand that the Pacific Ocean is the greatest controlling factor of our air temperature, and the prevailing wind for the most part is coming from the Pacific Ocean going inland. So it's just plain logical to understand that it's the mountains that create the barriers that determine what the air quality is going to be in these valleys. And I got to say, standing from Black Mountain, looking down into the Pozo Valley, standing at Manchesna as well as Pleiades Peak, that's our highest peak in the county, about 3,900 feet. There's, for the most part, clean to the west and southwest. But looking the other way, it's a different story. And I just got to say that the mountain ranges make a much more natural barrier than an arbitrary line. It's just not even reasonable to consider it an imaginary line when you have physical constraints. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sullivan.
Thank you. Andrea C. Strand, Grover Beach. Recently I made comments to the Board of Supervisors and to this body regarding the issue of lowering the bar from 2/3 to 55% to raise taxes by the vote of the people. I was pleased to see that the Board of Supervisors pulled that issue out of their 2013 legislative program, and I'm asking SLOCOG, when you talk about this in April, to do the same. You must be aware that gas tax is going up 3.5% July 1st. And that was, thank you to the State Board of Equalization, a 3-2 vote. And they said the reason was they were increasing was due to a $157 million shortfall in gas tax revenue in fiscal 2012 and a projection of less consumption by California drivers. So we carpool. I carpooled here. We take the bus, we ride a bike, we walk, and where does that get us? A tax increase. And now SLOCOG is going to be considering in April asking the state legislature to do perhaps the same thing, to lower that bar of 2/3 to 55% vote of the people for a tax increase regarding transportation issues. And all I would say, it reminds me of that old 1966 Beatles song, The Tax Man. And so, you know, there's one fee that we could consider. And I remember in that song, it's if you take a walk, I'll tax your feet. And I expect that that will be happening in the near future. Thank you.
I just had one concern. You know, the program sounded good, and I know that parents from Teach School are working on that issue of crowded behavior, dropping your kids off. But my question is, what is this RFID chipping of our kids? That is a real concern, so if you could explain that, please, because surveillance and, you know, that is a concern.
Thank you. I am Eric Greening, and first, one issue where Ms. Mordaunt's RFID concern might come up would be if a mileage tax were passed, because then people wouldn't trust you not to tinker with your odometer. There might be a chip in everyone's car, and Big Brother would just happen to know where you've gone. So let's flat out oppose those. But mostly I want to ask you to table sequel reform and put that on the agenda for April, when we can have some analysis of the 26 bills that have been introduced that purport to reform CEQA, and they come from all over the place. But I can tell you the language you have right now is very dangerous, because it plays right into the hands of Steinberg's SB 731 and the follow-up legislation, some of which is not yet clear, because some of those 26 bills are spot bills where the content will be dumped in later. But SB 731 essentially creates what would be filled by these bills, and the intent is clearly to ramrod any project that purports to be smart growth and deprive communities of the opportunities to mitigate or even know what the impacts are. Everything in scale from the high-speed rail to urban infill. And CEQA already provides a way to deal with the positive impacts of projects. It's the overriding considerations, but first we need to know the impacts of those projects and mitigate what we can. Language I've suggested to the supervisors is closely monitor legislation which purports to reform the California Environmental Quality Act, supporting reforms that eliminate redundant steps without compromising thoroughness and that protect and enhance the public's right to bring forth relevant information, while opposing moves to exempt politically favored classes of projects from scrutiny and mitigation. Thank you.
Now, I was walking down the street just the other day when two fine-looking women folk happened to walk my way. Now, one said, "Something stinks." The other one said, "You right." Then I started slipping and sliding, and I knew something wasn't right.
Step in what? Step in what? Step in what?
Now, everybody knows. They say the smell of the fellow, but everybody knows just what it is. Now there's some four-legged creature out playing on my mind. He's got a ham bone on his breast and evil in his hind. I'm gonna find myself a stick and scrape off these blues, and go on down to the DAV and buy myself some shoes.
Step in what? Step in what? Step in what?
Now everybody knows. They say smell of the fella, but everybody knows just what it is. I carry me a roll of paper towel in my briefcase every night. Got me a can of Lysol too, and that makes everything right. And there's them same two women folk I just saw the other day, and they both got sticks scraping off their shoes with their heads turned the other way.
Step in what? What is step in? Step in what?
Now everybody knows. They say the smell of the fella, but everybody knows just what it is. Now they say what goes around comes around, and I know that's got to be true. So don't you folks be laughing too hard, because next time it might be you. And if it ever happened to you, well, that's really not a sin. And what's this I feel underneath my shoe? I done made that same mistake again.
Step in what? Step in what? Step in what?
Everybody knows. They say smell of the fella, but everybody knows just what it is.
Step in what? Step in what? Step in what?
Everybody knows. They say smell of the fella, but everybody knows just what it is.